Okay, so today's video, I'm going to be talking about kids shows. And when I say kids shows, I mean little kids shows. You know what I'm talking about. Dora the Explorer, Barney, Caillou, Paw Patrol, Blue's Clues, Wonder Pets, anything else that comes to your mind that you watched from, say, age 2 to 5, maybe 6. Because there are generally two categories of kids shows. You have little kids shows, which is what I'm about to talk about now, and then you have somewhat older kids shows, stuff like SpongeBob, The Fairly Odd Parents, shows like that. Shows that are on like that upper tier of kids stuff. Most of the stuff that's featured on networks like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and then you have little kids networks like Nick Jr., and amongst others that I'm not really aware of. But anyways, so little kids shows or kids shows. We all watched them when we were little, and most of us try to deny it. Sorry, can't talk. Most of us try to deny it. Why is this? Possibly because we're embarrassed that we enjoyed these shows at one point in time, because nowadays, if any of us tried to watch them, it would just be a cringe fest. In preparation for making this video, I did rewatch a few of my, not necessarily favorite per se, but kids shows I watched a lot when I was little. I rewatched a few episodes just to get a handle on, what I was talking about, because, it's been years since I've seen most of these shows, so I wanted to refresh my memory to see how, how things have changed, because, some of these shows are still going on today. Some of them have been off the air for years. Yeah, and, well, it was a mixed bag. First, let's talk about some of the ones that didn't hold up so well. How about we start with Dora the Explorer, because a lot of people hate that show. In fact, I think when I was maybe 5 or 6, I started hating that show to the point where I only watched it to make fun of it. And something like that. I don't exactly remember, going that far back is a bit hazy, but I do distinctly remember, Dora always talking to the audience, and I would just talk back to her and just, essentially roast her as a 5 or 6-year-old kid. And something else about Dora the Explorer is that its formulaicness puts shows like Scooby-Doo to shame. Because you have the same musical numbers, you always have 3 destinations, Destination 1, Destination 2, Destination 3. In that high-pitched tone of voice that I just kind of emulated right there. And she, looks right at the audience and always says, we need to find XYZ. Where is it? Or we need to find the curtain. Where is it? And then the, if my finger here is the blue computer mouse, it would go quomp and then click on the curtain right there. And it would be like, you found it, or we found it, or something like that. And then you always have Swiper, you always have to say, swipe or no swiping, swipe or no swiping. Now, one thing about Swiper that has always kind of baffled me, well, 2 things technically. First of all, by telling him not to steal, what's the objective there? Is that just for the laughs, or is it because they're trying to teach kids that if you tell someone not to steal, they won't? Which results with that will extremely vary. If it's just like a schoolyard bully or a friend teasing you, they might listen to you. But if you say that when an adult robber's breaking into your house, they're just gonna freaking shove you aside and steal all your valuables. So, yeah. Now, the big thing that always bothered me about Swiper is when he would succeed in stealing their thing, it would always be Swiper. They'd be on the 3rd one, and they'd be saying, Swiper, no. He takes it, and they go, swiping. And then he's like, hey, you'll never find it now. And then instead of keeping it for himself like any robber or burglar would, he just tosses it off screen. Seriously, what kind of burglar or robber is he? Or bandit, whatever the hell he is. What kind of bandit is he if he steals people's stuff? Not for his own personal gain, but just to inconvenience them. It's basically like an Easter egg hunt, It's like if someone were to take $20 from you, and instead of keeping it for themselves, they just threw it off somewhere into the woods or something, and you had to go and find it. Like, I mean, it's still stealing, but, like, why? Why? It's just a minor inconvenience. Like, it's like he doesn't actually want the stuff they have. He just wants to be a jerk. He just wants to piss them off. It's weird. Okay. And yeah, and then, oh boy. Yeah, Dora the Explorer was a show that existed. Man, oh man. Alright, moving on, let's talk about another one that, and this is another one that is very, very widely hated, Caillou. Caillou is another show that is very, very widely hated, especially among parents, it seems, parents that are forced to watch the show with their kid. I watched my fair share of this show when I was little, and I don't remember the exact runtime. I'm pretty sure the show has been off the air for years now, if I'm remembering right. And I remember when the show first started out, that was when it was at its worst. That's the opposite of how most shows go. However, it was still finding its footing, I guess you could say. Because most kids said Caillou was an insufferable brat, and that it was just, really bad to watch. One of the most infamous scenes was in one of the first, 3 or 4 episodes, where Caillou, his younger sister, was just an infant in this episode, even though in most she's a toddlerish age. He, is jealous that she's taking the attention away from his mom and dad, and he goes up to her, and I think he either pinches her cheek or her ear or the side of her face or something. He just, grabs it and pulls it and pinches it really hard, making her scream. And that oh my god, that was, yeah, because Caillou is really an insufferable brat, and they did level out his character in the newer episodes of the show, and I remember in the new episodes, they put in a big fantasy element, they started, Caillou started imagining a lot of stuff, which, does make sense for a little kid. But yeah, the old episodes, the one where he wore a gray shirt instead of a yellow one, that's when it was really bad. Another big scene is, when his dad was going to take him to the circus. This was one of the episodes I actually rewatched. Is his dad was going to take him to the circus. So Caillou, makes a big fuss of getting himself ready in the morning, and then his dad comes by and tells him, we're not actually going to the circus today, it's not until tomorrow. And then Caillou throws a huge-ass temper tantrum, and it's very annoying for the audience to watch. I think the problem may have been that the show was a little too realistic at first. They were focusing on the bad elements of little kids rather than the good, which is, even if it's supposed to be an educational show, it's still TV. You still want to focus on the better aspects of something that can be very, very annoying, If that makes any sense. However, that show always was kind of annoying, and it's definitely one of the most widely hated kids shows, even today. But it was definitely at its worst in its early days. So moving on, one of the most classic kids shows of all time would have to be Sesame Street. I'm sure everybody, and it's a multi-generational show. It's, it's been around for over 50 years or something. And you have all the different segments with all the different characters. You have Big Bird, Grover, Oscar the Grouch, Ernie and Bert. Yeah, Ernie and Bert. You have Elmo, you have the Count, the Cookie Monster, And even though all these characters are aimed towards, very little kids, they're very recognizable. They're very recognizable icons that if you make a reference to them or see a picture of them, you'll instantly know them, It's a very popular kids show. And again, it is relatively, watching it now, it didn't necessarily make me cringe like Caillou or Dora did. However, it wasn't very entertaining for me because, all the little lessons and morals that they taught are stuff that I learned years ago. So the entertainment value wasn't really there for me because, it was aimed for little kids. And I do remember this. I think this was about 4 years ago now. They added a new character into Sesame Street with autism to, teach about that sort of thing, which I thought was pretty cool, But I know it did come with a bit of backlash because, adding a new character to a so strongly grounded cast really does, come with some drawbacks. So yeah, there's that. Next up, I guess we'll talk about Blue's Clues. Now, Blue's Clues, I think, was one of the better ones. I did rewatch an episode, one of the old ones with Steve Burns, and it held up all right. I mean, I didn't find myself cringing, and I didn't necessarily find myself bored. I mean, there's definitely more entertaining things I could have watched for that half hour, but I still found it relatively appealing, you know. Now with Blue's Clues, you know, I think they are up to they're on their third host right now, and they've kind of rebranded the show to that thing Blue's Clues and You, and they have that new guy, the younger Filipino guy, I think. I forget his name. I think Josh. I think his name is Josh. And also I think in the new stuff, yeah, there's a new host or human character. Josh, I think his name is, and then Blue is now in CG as opposed to South Park style clip art, as in the parts with Steve and Joe, the two that I grew up with, mostly Steve. Blue was like some kind of like clip art thing, kind of like the animation in South Park, but also kind of different. But now Blue is in CG, which is just a sign of the times, I guess, that CG is the way of the future. But anyways, yeah, so Blue's Clues, and I will admit, Blue's Clues does have some things about it that can get on one's nerves. They don't necessarily get on my nerves, but I can definitely see how they would get on one's nerves, because the show, each episode is very formulaic. You have all the song cues. Two of the most memorable ones for me are the one at the end. It's like, now it's time for so long, but let's sing just one more song. Thanks for doing your part. You sure are smart. That one. As soon as I heard the song when watching the episode, it immediately came back into my mind. And then there's also probably the most famous song from the show, the mail time song. Here's the mail, it never fails, it makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail, mail. That one. And then he sits down in his chair, and the mailbox stretches and comes in through his window. And quick side note here, when I was a little kid, I was always so jealous of that mailbox. I was like, why can't I have a freaking mailbox that can stretch itself and come in through my window so I can just be sitting in my freaking armchair and just the mailbox just comes in through the window and I can just reach over and grab the mail out of it. But no, I gotta freaking walk outside and grab it like a peasant. Yeah, and so that was something. But anyways, yeah, so Blue's Clues is relatively formulaic. The same songs every episode. You always have that section where the, Blue and Steve, Joe, Josh, or whoever else, they do that thing, they skidoo, I think it was called, where they go like, Blue skidooed, I can too, and then they go, brrrr, and then they go into the painting or the book or wherever they're going into. And they do that. And of course the main segment of every episode is you have to solve this like little mystery or quest that Blue sets up for you, the audience, and you go along with, the humans, Steve, Joe, Josh, or whoever, to try and solve it. Blue leaves a paw print, one of her blue paw prints, on 3 clues somewhere around the house. And, you have to go around and find them and then solve the little mystery that she set up. And it's simple stuff like for instance, what does Blue want to have as an activity at her birthday party, or what story does Blue want to read before going to bed? Simple stuff. And again, not an excellent show, but it definitely has aged better. It's good for little kids, but and while it's not great watching it, as a 19-year-old man, it's definitely aged better than some of the others, It's definitely aged better than some of the others. Some other quick ones, you have Barney. Barney was alright. I just remember, one thing I remember about Barney was, I didn't really watch that much Barney, but one thing I remember was that when I was in like first grade or something, there was that rumor going around that he dropped an F-bomb on TV and got arrested or something like that. I don't know what that was about, and maybe some of you guys remember that too, because I always thought of it rationally, because being someone who's relatively into film and TV and all that, if Barney or like the person wearing the costume or however they did that effect with Barney, I always, because it could have been someone in a dinosaur onesie or who knows what, but I assumed if Barney really did drop an F-bomb during taping, sure, he might get scolded by the director because there are probably kids there, but they're just going to delete that take and do another one. It's not like it's a live stream, so that's a little weird. And some other remarks about Barney. I mean, I do know he is one of the more... Well, he's both beloved and hated. He's kind of a mixed bag. I know that he is one of the more famous ones, but he's also one of the more hated ones at the same time. And from what I remember, Barney was relatively formulaic. You know, you had all the same songs, you know. Of course, the most famous one for him was the I Love You, You Love Me, We're a Happy Family song, which they did towards the end of pretty much every episode. And there may have been... I think they did sing a lot of songs in Barney, however, they were a lot more varied, which was good. So yeah, there was that. And then, I mean, I could go on like this for a while. You know, you have... let's see. There's a lot of the newer ones, you know, like... what are some other ones? These are just miscellaneous ones that I may have watched one or two episodes of on Nick Jr. or Noggin or whatever it was at the time. You know, you have ones like Team Umi Zumi, Jake and the Netherland Pirates, Paw Patrol, Peppa Pig. Oh my god, Peppa Pig. I watched maybe 3 episodes of that, and it was weird. Let me just talk about that one for a quick minute. So, Peppa Pig, you know, about pigs. So, when watching Peppa Pig, a lot of questions just sprang into my mind. For one thing, why is every building in that show located on a hill that has a 90-degree slope? Like, why? Why is that? And then something else is that every episode basically ends with them rolling onto their backs and laughing, which is, I mean, not bad, but I just want to ask why. I don't know. It was a little weird. Yeah, I mean, those are just a couple of things I retained from the few episodes I watched of the show a long time ago. So, and I did look up a few images, you know, before making this video to refresh my memory, and yeah, so I don't really know how bad that show was or good, but some questions come to my mind. Yeah, so okay, this video is getting a little long, but I'm going to talk about two more kids shows now. First one here is going to be real quick. Now this is another one of the more infamous ones as far as I'm aware, is the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. As far as I know, the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, not the Mickey Mouse Club, but the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, is a pretty widely hated kids show. You know, you have all the Mickey Mouse characters there. You know, you have Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, Goofy, and Pluto in very hyper-realistic and brightly colored CG. Almost looks like cutscenes from a PlayStation 1 game. And they're just hanging out in this clubhouse doing stuff. I mean, they go around on quests, quote-unquote, like petty quests, you know, like little kid stuff. They go around, like, helping people, and I didn't watch an episode of the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I tried. I quit after the 3-minute mark. I just couldn't get through it. It was very just, oh my god. And just looking at the way the characters are drawn, if you compare it to anything, you know, like, just looking at them, you know, like Mickey compared to any one of his other incarnations, you know, especially the older ones that I'm used to looking at, or looking at freaking Donald compared to him in, you know, the current DuckTales reboot, which I've been watching a lot. It's just so weird to see them in that form of CG, and the plots are very cringy, and you also have the songs, you know, on top of the opening theme song, you always have the hot dog song that they sing at the end. That's like the only thing I remember from the show. And from what the little bit I watched, the CG animation was very clunky and just very jarring. And watching that show, and the fact that I couldn't even get through 3 minutes of an episode, really shows you that, yeah, that one was not very good. I do remember I watched it, but oh boy, it's that CG animation just, I really cannot get past it. It is just ugly. And the plots do seem very dumbed down, very little kid-like. Now, I get it. Mickey and his gang of friends, they have been catered to little kids before. However, they've also been catered to adults. I mean, Mickey in one of his oldest incarnations chewed tobacco. I mean, Donald has a really fiery temper, Like, they can be aimed towards adults, too. But there's this stupid stereotype nowadays that, cartoons are meant for kids, and kids are stupid, so we have to make cartoons stupid. Which, that in itself is stupid, because that's not true at all. Alright, moving on to the last kids show I wanted to talk about. And we're going to end on a high note. I wanted to talk about Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, Thomas the Tank Engine was one of my favorite kids shows growing up, if not my favorite kids show growing up. And I actually watched this kids show longer than any other kids show I've previously mentioned. I started watching it maybe age 2 or 3, and held on to it until I think I was about 7. It even started to blend together with shows like SpongeBob and The Fairly Odd Parents, some of the earliest older kids shows that I was first allowed to watch. And something else I see in retrospect, and even saw back then, is my parents were a lot more willing to watch Thomas the Tank Engine with me over any other TV show, Oftentimes parents have to watch little kids shows just as much as the little kids do, because, the kids are like, Mommy, Daddy, watch the show with me. And they're like, okay. And they sit down and watch it with them. And I just always remember my parents were a lot more willing to watch Thomas the Tank Engine with me compared to almost any other show. And I've also been made aware that Thomas the Tank Engine has a rather large adult fandom. And I honestly don't blame them. I mean, I can see the appeal, even because I did rewatch a few episodes, and I got through them, and I actually kind of enjoyed them. Not that I would watch it avidly, like the adult fans might, but I can definitely see the appeal for them, Now, I believe that the reason for all these things, me holding on to this show for a little longer, my parents being more willing to watch it, it having an adult fandom, I believe all of these, things, the reason for all of these things revolving around the show boils down to one simple fact. Thomas the Tank Engine is one of the only kids shows I've ever seen that doesn't talk down to its audience. It's not blatantly educational, it doesn't beat you over the head with its morals, it has variance in tone, it doesn't talk directly to you and ask you no-brainer questions, it has subtlety. It has a subtlety that a lot of other kids shows don't, and at least the older seasons, the one that I watched, the one that used the models, not the CG animation, they were just a lot less goofy, a lot less dumb. Now, I can't speak for the newer seasons, the one with the CG animation, again, CG, way of the future. I can't speak for those ones. I've heard they are a little more dumbed down, with corporation buyouts and whatnot, and the creator or the producer of the show having to sell the rights after the failure that was the Thomas movie in the year 2000. But anyways, But as for seasons, I think it was 1 through 7 or 1 through 8, the ones where they use the train models, that is one of the only kids shows I've ever seen that doesn't, it doesn't act condescending towards its audience. It treats the kids who watch it, its audience, as, an equal to. It tells them the story. It doesn't say, all right, listen here, you little shits. This is the story, and this is what you're going to learn, okay? It's no. It's like, all right, kids, here's a story. I'm going to tell it to you. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why, generally speaking, it is, at least in my experience, a very well-liked kids show, because all of my friends when I was little, they all liked Thomas, and when I asked them about other kids shows, there were always mixed opinions, like, oh, I like that one, I hate that one, yada, yada, yada. So, Thomas the Tank Engine is a show about trains. You have all these trains, just going about on this island, doing this work, and they just, interact and learn things along the way. And there's no songs, at least in the one I watched. There's music, but it's all instrumental, and there's no, singing along to it. They did make some songs later on, but they were only bonus features on DVDs, to my knowledge. And something else is that each episode was rather short, which was both good and bad. I mean, one good thing is that it was able to, hold my attention, rewatching it later. It wasn't like a half-hour Blues Clues episode or a half-hour Mickey Mouse Clubhouse episode where it could have potentially turned into an endurance. And generally speaking, I would say the fact that they used little train models to make the show was a really cool design choice, something you almost never see. It's the equivalent of way back on my old channel when I made skit videos with my Mario action figures. It's kind of like that, except, a much higher budget because it was a professional TV show. So, and you probably have some opinions on these kids shows too, So if you want to leave your opinions, leave them in the comments below. Some of you might agree with me. Some of you might disagree with me. I know some of you, first of all, if you're that little, you probably shouldn't be watching my videos because I do swear quite a bit. But maybe you still are in that age range where you enjoy some of these kids shows. Or maybe you're a teenager who thinks they're all garbage just because that's the teenage mindset. Or maybe you're an adult who has kids yourself and is forced to watch some of these shows and cringes so hard your face implodes because they're obnoxious, And I'm not sure what most of the newer kids shows are on nowadays and how good they are, because these are all some of the ones that I watched when I was little. And some of them hold up fairly good. Some of them hold up terribly. Thomas, I'd say, is the only one that holds up good, so to speak. So yeah, so if you have any thoughts on these kids shows, leave them in the comments below, and, because, we all watched them. Whether we remember it or not, we all watched them. It's pretty much one thing that almost all of us have in common, so. Alright, well, this video is almost a half hour long, so I should probably cut it here, so thank you all for watching, and take care.